What if a giant wooden fidget spinner had its own custom display case? No one asked, but I made one anyways from scratch for the first time, so here's how that went. To be honest, I didn't really want to make this at all, but our professor made it mandatory to not only do, but to do before our actual piece, which is going to be this guy if you didn't see the first video already. Step 1. Grab free plywood from the wood shop. Step 2. Hunt down a massive sheet of plexiglass from some dude on Facebook Marketplace. Step 3. Preparatory measurements. So many micro measurements. There were so many things to factor in this, like the width of the acrylic itself, so that everything would correctly line up. I wanted to make wooden joints with carved slits in them to join the plexi pieces, but my professor was pretty against it and told me to use these colorful sheets of aluminum instead. I obliged because, like I mentioned before, I honestly didn't feel too invested in this part of the process. I was told to use metal shears to cut my aluminum edge pieces, which ended up being a disaster. The shears were damaging the aluminum kind of beyond repair, so I gave up and I found my own solution. I found this giant metal blade in the back of the lab, and while it wasn't a perfect solution, it worked a lot better. Super satisfying to use. After getting all the pieces to size, I bent them at 90 degrees with a giant metal press to make the corners. This is my first time using a curative bonding adhesive, which is basically a heavy-duty resin glue. I really disliked the first one I was told to use. It had a super strong smell that stressed me out. Like, are we sure this is safe to use inside of a lab? Resin is toxic and it should be taken seriously. I always wear a well-fitted mask and gloves just in case. Even though the label said it bonds in 15 minutes, it actually took about an hour of clamping before it was strong enough to hold the acrylic. When I went to Home Depot for more, I found a version made specifically for bonding plastics, and it had no odor. It made finishing the rest of the project way easier, especially since I didn't really feel safe using the smelling one in my tiny little apartment. Despite all my efforts, glue still got in the plexi, and unlike real glass, you can't scrape it because it'll scratch. You could also see pretty noticeable overhang and glue from the interior metal corner pieces. My solution to this was to paint primary color accents over them on the front of the plexiglass case. I wish I primed these or something because I didn't really love how the paint turned out, but it was what it was, and I was basically out of time anyways at this point. Next was curing the hinges to the plexiglass case and joining the other sides to the wood. Every part of this case is supposed to be handmade, and that includes the hinges. I made the hinges myself from scratch, which is why they look like that. I cut the metal, I soldered them, and I used a tap and die to thread the bar. Unfortunately, my DIY hinges don't stack up to like regular industrial made hinges, so they were having a hard time holding up my case. The acrylic box is a lot heavier than it looks. So far, they haven't broken, but when the class is over, I'll probably have to switch them out for real hinges if I actually want this case to last. I added a magnet latch to try and help hold the weight, but it wasn't strong enough, so then I tried again and I cured some tiny magnets in the corners. Those popped off pretty quickly. I'm still brainstorming a long-term fix for this problem, which will probably just involve better hinges and stronger magnets. But besides that, here's the final case. Even though it's imperfect and a little wonky, I got a lot of hands-on experience working with curative bonding agents, plastic, wood, and metal. So now that that's out of the way, I can finally work on Fidget friend number 1, which means no one ever has to ask the question,